You know, thank you. Before I begin, this is such an important night for our country. I want to take with your permission, just a few seconds to talk about another country, a country located just a few hundred miles away from this city, the country of my parents' birth. There's no freedom or liberty in Cuba, and tonight I ask for your prayers that soon freedom and liberty will be theirs as well. You know, this is a big honor for me. Not so long ago, I was just a deep underdog candidate. The only people that thought I could win all lived in my house. 4 of them were under the age of 10. I thought the best way to introduce Mitt Romney tonight, the next president of the United States, is to talk about what this election is about. And I'm so honored to be able to do it here in Florida at the Republican National Convention in front of all you patriots. I watched my first convention in 1980 with my grandfather. My grandfather was born to a farming family in rural Cuba. Childhood polio left him permanently disabled. Because he couldn't work the farm, his family sent him to school. He was the only one in his family that knew how to read. He was a huge influence on me growing up. As a boy, I used to sit on the porch of our house and listen to his stories about history and politics and baseball as he would puff on one of his 3 daily Padron cigars. And I don't remember all the things he talked to me about. But the one thing I remember is the one thing he wanted me never to forget: that the dreams he had when he was young became impossible to achieve. But there was no limit how far I could go because I was an American. Now, for those of us, here's why I say that. Because for those of us who are born and raised in this country, sometimes it becomes easy to forget how special America is. But my grandfather understood how different America was from the rest of the world because he knew life outside America. Tonight, you will hear from another man who understands what makes America exceptional. Now tonight, we've heard for a long time now about Mitt Romney's success in business. It's well known. But we've also learned that he's so much more than that. Mitt Romney's a devoted husband, a father, a grandfather, a generous member of his community and church, a role model for younger Americans like myself. Everywhere he's been, he's volunteered his time and talent to make things better for those around him. And we are blessed that a man like this will soon be the president of these United States. Let me be clear, so no one misunderstands. Our problem with President Obama isn't that he's a bad person, okay? By all accounts, he too is a good husband and a good father, and thanks to lots of practice, a good golfer. Our problem is not that he's a bad person. Our problem is that he's a bad president. As for his old slogan, under Barack Obama, the only change is that hope is hard to find. Now, sadly, millions of Americans are insecure about their future. But instead of inspiring us by reminding us of what makes us special, he divides us against each other. He tells Americans that they're worse off because others are better off, that rich people got rich by making other people poor. Hope and change has become divide and conquer. I know for many of you watching at home tonight, the last few years have tested your faith in the promise of America. Maybe you're at an age when you thought you would be entering retirement, but now because your savings and investments are wiped out, your future is uncertain. Maybe after years of hard work, this was the time you expected to be your prime earning years, but instead you've been laid off and your house is worth less than your mortgage. Maybe you did everything you were told you needed to do to get ahead. You studied hard and finished school, but now you owe thousands of dollars in student loans. You can't find a job in your field, and you've had to move back in with your parents. You want to believe that we're still that special place where anything is possible. But things just don't seem to be getting any better. And you wonder if things will ever be the same again. Yes, we live in a troubled time. But the story of those who came before us reminds us that America has always been about new beginnings. And Mitt Romney is running for president because he knows that if we are willing to do for our children what our parents did for us, life in America can be better than it has ever been. My mother was one of 7 girls whose parents often went to bed hungry so their children wouldn't. My father lost his mother when he was 9. He had to leave school and go to work, and he would work for the next 70 years of his life. They immigrated to America with little more than the hope of a better life. My dad was a bartender. My mom was a cashier, a hotel maid, a stock clerk at Kmart. They never made it big. They were never rich. And yet they were successful. Because just a few decades removed from hopelessness, they made possible for us all the things that had been impossible for them. Many nights growing up, I would hear my father's keys jingling at the door as he came home after another 16-hour day. Many mornings I woke up just as my mother got home from the overnight shift at Kmart. When you're young and you're in a hurry, the meaning of moments like this escape you. But now, as my children get older, I understand it better. My dad used to tell us, en este país, ustedes van a poder lograr todas las cosas que nosotros no pudimos. In this country, you're going to be able to accomplish all the things we never could. A few years ago, during a speech, I noticed a bartender behind a portable bar in the back of the ballroom. And I remembered my father, who worked for many years as a banquet bartender. He was grateful for the work he had, but that's not the life he wanted for us. You see, he stood behind a bar in the back of the room all those years, so one day I could stand behind a podium in the front of a room. But that's not just my story. That's your story. That's our story. That's the story of your mothers, who struggled to give you what they never had. That's the story of your fathers who worked 2 jobs so that the doors that had been closed for them would be open for you. That's the story of that teacher or that coach that taught you the lessons that made you who you are today. And it's the story of a man who was born into an uncertain future in a foreign country. His family came to America to escape revolution. They struggled through poverty and the Great Depression. And yet he rose to be an admired businessman and public servant. And in November, his son Mitt Romney will be elected president of these United States. The story of our time will be written by Americans who haven't yet even been born. Let us make sure they write that we did our part. That in the early years of this new century, we lived in an uncertain time. But we did not allow fear to cause us to abandon what made us special. We chose more government instead of more freedom. We chose the principles of our founding to solve the challenges of our time. We chose a special man to lead us in a special time. We chose Mitt Romney to lead our nation, and because we did, the American miracle lived on for another generation to inherit. My fellow Republicans, my fellow Americans, I am proud to introduce to you the next President of the United States of America, Mitt Romney.
And here he comes from the back of the forum, 20,000 people looking down. The presidential candidate, the nominee, Mitt Romney, walking into this giant arena. 20,000 people, as we said, George.
After a stirring speech from the son of immigrants, Senator Marco Rubio, 42-year-old senator from Florida, rising star in the Republican Party, talking about their ideals, his story, and the man who now leads that party, their candidate for president, Mitt Romney.